welcome to Clarion Chats, the official podcast for the Clarion, which is the student-run school newspaper at Sinclair Community College. Hi, my name is Harley. I'm your host for this podcast, and I welcome you to our special monthly recap episode. This episode, we are recapping the month of February. So this is our February 2022 recap. Let's get into it. To start, we're going to just start with some basic news topics and go from there. In basic news, starting on Sunday, February 20th until Monday, February 28th, it was Palindrome Week, where pretty much, if you don't know what palindrome means, it just basically means it's a sequence, no matter if it's a sequence of numbers, shapes, words, whatever, it's a sequence of whatever that's read the same forward and backward. And so the big day during this week was Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, because it was the special 2/22/22 day. And it's really good to note on this that this is going to be the last time that this is ever going to happen like this. You have to think there's nowhere else in our calendar where we have single digit, double digit, double digit that will be all the same. For instance, this was 2/22/22. We don't have a 33rd day to any month, so we can't do 3/33/33, which would be 3/33/33, which would basically be the date March 33rd, 2033. We could not do that, but we can do 3/3/33. So the next time that we're going to see some type of sequence of numbers like this will be March 3rd, 2033. But as for this single digit, double digit, double digit, words all the same, we will not see this anymore. This will be the last one ever. Other than that, this kind of thing only happens once in a decade. But another really cool thing that happened on the 22nd of February was there was a couple that gave birth to their first child in the Cone Health Ambulance Regional Medical Center in Burlington, North Carolina. This couple gave birth to their first child in room 2 on February 22nd, 2022 at 2:22 a.m. Man, like, talk about a miracle baby. Moving on to some politics. There was quite a few things that happened in February that we are going to recap. So one thing was Trump allegedly was violating the Presidential Papers Act. Allegedly, I guess, during his presidency, he was like flushing documents down the toilet and I guess eating them, which I don't know how true that really is, but like, okay, if you're willing to go to that length to hide some information, okay, like that's like next level. But he was under investigation for that, and for the most part, that's still a developing story. They're still trying to find evidence for a lot of it, but it looks like they are finding evidence that points towards him violating this Presidential Papers Act. Also, the states are starting to lift their mask mandates. As I'm recording this now, it's March 1st, 2022. Ohio still hasn't really lifted their mask date entirely, but there are some other states who have. To go even a step further, the CDC is kind of lifting some of their mask mandates on some forms of public transportations and stuff like that. So to get the full information on mask mandates, I'll leave something down in the description for you so you can read up on if your state still has a mask mandate along with the federal mask mandate requirements. As when it comes to the vaccine, there's really no more updates on that right now that I can see. So right now it's just looking for your state or the government to lift mask mandates. But with that keeping in mind, still remember, like, COVID is still out there, even though we're not talking about it as much. But moving on Biden picked his Supreme Court nominee, and he kept his promise of nominating the first Black woman to the Supreme Court. And her name is Ketanji Brown Jackson. Lastly, in politics, Russia and Ukraine, something that's continuing to go on. Like I said, I'm filming this March 1st, and this is still a developing story, but if you don't know what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, what's going on between the two, what's going on in Ukraine, especially, pretty much the USSR fell like apart decades ago. And a lot of the countries that were a part of the USSR claimed independence decades ago as well. A lot of this happened around the time that the Berlin Wall fell and was taken down and all that stuff. Basically, you have all these countries and all that are near Russia who used to be part of the USSR, and Putin is to the point where he wants to kind of reunite the USSR, and he wants to remake it and like form it again. And so with that keeping in mind, why would he be going through Ukraine? Pretty much, if you're asking yourself why Ukraine, it's because Ukraine's not a NATO nation. Now, what is a NATO nation? Pretty much, to keep it short and simple, a NATO nation, a lot of world political leaders have vowed to protect these NATO nations. So basically, these political world leaders have vowed to protect NATO nations, and if Putin was to attack a NATO nation, then we quite literally would have World War III. Right now, it's not World War III. It's not looking to be a World War III right now. It's just really just a war. That's really all it is. It's just a little war. It won't become World War III unless Putin attacks a NATO nation, because then all these other countries who have vowed to protect the NATO nations will then have to step in, because there is a NATO nation protection treaty. So that's most likely why Putin chose to go after Ukraine first, since Ukraine is not a NATO nation. And for a while now, people have been talking about, should Ukraine be a NATO nation? Should it join NATO? And this has definitely brought that conversation back up. That is pretty much just a brief overview of Russia and Ukraine. More and more continues to happen with this every day. So make sure you're tuning into our podcast. You're following us on social media and all that stuff, where we're trying to give you guys a more in-depth timeline as things play out as quickly as we can and as accurately as we can. Moving on to Clary's sports breakdown. So the Olympics ended on February 20th, and they started on February 3rd. So they lasted a good 2 weeks. By the end of the event, Norway finished with the most medals overall with a total of 37, and the US had a total of 25 medals. That included 8 gold, 10 silver, and 7 bronze. Next, the Paralympics will be following, starting on March 4th, which is this upcoming Friday, and they will go until March 13th, so just a week for those events. Next, big in sports news, the U.S. women's national soccer team. They settled for $24 million in their equal pay case. This case has been going on since March of 2016. There's even a documentary, if you have HBO Max, there's a documentary about it that really just outlines everything that they've been through, why they're fighting so hard for equal pay, why it's so important, and all that stuff. So if you want to know a lot more details about this case, I recommend watching that documentary. Next, the NCAA basketball tournaments, both men and women, will be starting Sunday, March 13th, and they will go until Monday, April 4th. So that means March Madness and all that is upon us. Lastly, in sports, the Los Angeles Rams won the Super Bowl on Sunday, February 13th. They won 23-20 over the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals did hold it down for a long time, so go Bengals, hooray. We really gave them a good fight. And lastly, in entertainment, the kickoff to award season on February 27th, the SAG Awards aired, and there were loads of big winners. The night was hosted by Hamilton stars Leslie Odom Jr., Daveed Diggs, and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Okay, this has been this monthly recap episode of Clarion Chats. Our socials and our website and all that will be linked in the description below, so make sure you check it out so you don't miss a thing. Other than that, we'll see you next episode. Bye.